In this video, I'm going to take you through how to create a UI in Unreal Engine step by step, starting with the most basic methods, getting something on the screen. We'll add a button to the screen. We'll add an event to the button. So when you press the button, fun things happen. And we'll make it so that there's a message that gets updated on the screen whenever you press the button. So this is a really good way when you're starting out, trying to figure out how things work. We'll also dive into a couple of more advanced topics, so there should be something there for everyone. Let's get started. We will start by creating the widget blueprint. So I've opened up the content browser here, and this is an empty project. So I'll right click in the content browser. I'll go to user interface and I'll select the widget blueprint. Once I select the widget blueprint, it asks me to pick a parent class for the new widget blueprint, and by default, the only thing that you can select is the user widget, so we create that. This is going to create a new widget blueprint in the content browser called new widget blueprint. I'll press F2 on the keyboard to give it a new name, and I'm going to call it UI underscore widget for screen. So let's open our widget blueprint up to take a look at what's in there. So I double click on the icon here, and it's going to open up the widget editor for me. So I'm going to full screen that, and you can see the most important things to take notice here are these two things here on the left. So you have the hierarchy. This is going to be the UI hierarchy, and then you have the palette here. And basically the way this works is I normally just search for the components that I want. So when we're building UI, we built it out of these different UI components. And these can be images, these can be text, these can be buttons, and all sorts of things like that. So I'm going to do a search for text. So here you can see I found a text component. I'm going to drag it here into the widget for screen, our widget blueprint, and you can see here on the screen that it's added new text block. So now when I select the widget component or the text component here on the right, you see all of the properties that you can configure for this component, the text component. You have the color here, you have font. If we wanted to switch the font, we can change it to light, regular, or bold. Like, let's just keep it in bold. And here at the top, we can change the value that's being shown here. So I'm going to change this to this is my text widget. I'm going to save, and I'm going to compile here. So let's close this down for a little bit, and let's play the game. So when we're testing UI in particular, normally you're going to have the game be played like this. When you press the play button, you're going to have what's called play in viewport. So we can kind of fly around. If you're using the default level, you can fly around here. But what you'll notice is that we don't have our UI on the screen right now because we still have to add it. The way I just wanted to show the way that I like to do this is I like to switch the play button over to new editor window. It's going to give me a smaller window, and this window is going to be kind of constrained to much more kind of regular sizes. So not like you can see the play and editor window is just going to be as big as I have my viewport, but when I do play like this, it gets it's more manageable like that. So so now let's jump in and let's add our widget to the screen. So there are many ways to do this, but for our example here, we're going to make do the most simple one. So we are in a level. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to go and say open level blueprint. This is going to open up the level blueprint for this level, which means that this is logic that is going to run anytime that the level is running. So we have these two grayed out events. We have the begin play event and the tick event. Let's get rid of the tick event because we're not going to use that. And let's add a little bit of logic to the begin play. Begin play plays when the game starts. So we want to create the widget, and we want to add it to our viewport. And the way that we do that is I right click here on the in the blueprint editor. I like to type in just the name of the command. So I'll type in create widget. So this is going to give me the, it's under the user interface category. It's going to call create widget. So here I can select the widget that I want to have created. So if I press this button here, select class, it's going to give me a drop down of all of the kind of available widgets that I could create. And we have a bunch of ones from the actual engine that we don't really use. So our widget is called the UI underscore widget for screen. So we'll select that. Now what we need to do is we need to drag from the event begin play node and connect it to the create widget node here. So, and once I connected this, you notice that this is not grayed out anymore. So if you play the game right now, what's going to happen is that the level is gonna run. It's going to create our screen widget, but nothing is going to happen. And the reason for that is we need to add our widget to the screen. And the way I like to do that is adding the widget to the screen is a command that can be called on the widget itself. So you can see here that we are outputting, so if we wanted to run another node here at the back, we would drag out of this. But a really good trick is to drag out of the return value, and you'll see that this is going to give us actions taking a UI widget, which is our widget, as a reference. So here I can type in add to viewport, which is the node that we want. And this is going to give us a connection with the execution node, and it's going to connect our the return value here. We created the widget here, and we take the created widget and we say add it to the viewport. Now the only thing that we have to do is we need to save the level. So I press the save button here at the top. I'm going to call it map level. This can be whatever you want. And if we close this down again and we press play again, you can see here that this is my text widget is now here at the top left of the screen. As you noticed, our text is just at the top left of the screen here. So one of the things that is very important when we're making user interfaces is how do we align the actual widget. So we're going to go back into our widget blueprint, and we're going to take a little bit of a look at what's going on here. So what we did was we just added our text component here at the root of this widget, which means that it's just going to be positioned at the top left by default. So if you'll notice here at the top right, you can see a couple of these settings here. And one of the more kind of useful ones is like we can see how this is going to look if it fills the screen. And that's what we're seeing when we press play here. This is going to fill the screen and the text is going to come here in the center. But what if we wanted to show this in the middle, for example? So what we need to do then is we need to create a container for our component. And there are a couple of containers, but one of the most kind of useful ones is the canvas panel. The canvas panel allows us to do all sorts of anchoring, which means that if we're changing the size of the widget, it's going to let us kind of anchor to a certain corner, and it's going to give us a lot of control. It's going to give us a lot of control in positioning. So normally I would go ahead and just create, look for the canvas panel here. So it's under panels. And if I want to drag it over here, that's not going to work because the text widget, it can't have any children. So what we want is we want this text component. We want this to actually be a child of this canvas panel. So I'm going to right click. So here's a trick. What we could do is we could just remove the this component from the hierarchy, drag it in, and do it like that. But a really useful thing to do in this scenario is you can right click on the object or on the component in the hierarchy, and you can do wrap with, and then we find. So this is going to give us every single component that can contain children. such as our canvas panel. So let's just find the canvas panel. Here we go. And now you can see that the widget has changed, or the hierarchy has changed. So now our root is a canvas panel, and then we can take a look at the text, which is a child of this panel. It's still in the same spot, but you can see there are a couple of different, like there's a little bit of graphics here. One of them is showing us that this is not taking a lot of space, it's overflowing outside of its box, and then we have this kind of anchoring graphic here as well. So in its most simple form, if we wanted to center the text, for example, we can go here under the anchors on the right. We can change it to anchor to the center. So I'm going to pick that. So once I change the anchors, you'll notice that nothing happened. And this is because it's going to try to keep your component in place for when you change the anchor. So you can see that right now, once I change this, the position is now set to minus 960 and the Y position is set to minus 540. So if we put this to 0 now, you can see that this gets added to the center, but you'll see that this is not the center of this, is actually still kind of the top corner of the component, and we want this to be kind of square in the middle. And the way we do that is we select the text component again. We go to the slot. We look at the alignment value. So the alignment value basically controls. It's a number that you can set it to whatever, but it's normally set from 0 to 1. So in this case, we want this to align on the x-axis. So if we open this up, you can see the x-axis. That's left and right. We set that to 0.5. which means that this is going to be right in the center. And we do the same for Y, even though it's a little bit harder, so I'm scrolling in, harder to see, we want to set the Y value to 0.5 as well. So we would expect this to now be in the middle, but as you can see, this is not quite in the middle yet. And this is because the actual size of our component, of our text component within the canvas panel is not set correctly. So we can go in here and we can modify the size manually. So if we say, for example, this is 500 pixels, or like the 500 units on x-axis, you can see, and if I do 800, you can see that this is getting a little bit like it's being kind of modified. But what we basically want, we always want this to be in the middle. And the problem that's going to happen is that if we manually set the size on X and Y axes, this is not going to be good if we need to change the text. So a good thing to do here is we can use the size to content option, or size to content flag. And the size to content flag just means that the size, these two values, are going to be taken from the content itself. So it's going to be based on how many. So if we change the text, for example, you can see that the center, the size of it, the green box here, is always the same. One other thing to note about this is that even though this is my widget, even though this looks and is correct here, there is, especially when you're aligning text, if we go here on the right, we have all sorts of settings here, and one of the settings that's good to know about is the justification setting. So like if for our case right now, this is not doing anything, but in many cases it's not enough just to align this in the using size to content. You want to be aware of the justification settings here as well. Now that we play, we should be able to see our widget at the center of the screen. And because we set it up using the canvas panel and we anchored it to the center, even if we change the size of the window here, you can see that it stays in the middle, which is pretty useful. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to add a button that's going to do something. So I normally like to start when I'm setting stuff like this up with an incredibly simple scenario. So we'll go ahead and go into the palette again. Let's search for button. This is going to give us the button here. We drag it here down into the canvas panel, and it's going to show up here in the top corner, just like I did before. We can anchor this any way we like, but while we're testing, you can also just take it and you could just drag it and place it wherever you want. So this is probably going to look weird because we're not anchoring this correctly, but we're just testing this out to begin with. So another cool thing about the button is that the button can actually contain a single child. So here we have this button, and if I play, you'll see that it comes with a couple of things built in. So it has a hover effect, it has a click effect, but it's not doing anything. The button can actually take a child component. So I'm going to add a text component, and I'm going to drop it in here. And now you can see that I have a text block that's inside of the button. And I'm going to change the name of the text block to press me. Here we go, and you can see that the button here is actually kind of the text is flowing a little bit outside of the button. So what we want to do is we want to select the button, do size to content again. So now you can see that the button is following the shape and the size of the text. But that might not be, we might want to do a little bit more styling to it. So maybe we don't want it to follow it kind of exactly. So what we can do is we can go into the text itself, and we can tell the text you should take up a little bit more space, and we do this with the padding value here. So because this is a child of the button, we have access to padding values left, top, right, and bottom. So let's just add let's just do 16 to the left and 16 to the right. So you can see that now we have a little bit of spacing on the left and right, and let's do maybe 8 on top and 8 on bottom. So now we have a button that gives us a little bit more space. So now that we have styled our button the way that we like, we're going to add an event to that button. And the way to add an event to a button is we select the button widget here. We can pick it out here as well. So let's zoom out a little bit. And this is actually something that's new in the later versions of Unreal Engine. You need to turn this button into a variable here on the top right. So we turn the button into a variable, and the moment that we do that, and now this is maybe a little bit hard to see, you get access to these options here, or these events here, on clicked, on pressed, on released, on hovered, and on unhovered. So I'm going to go ahead, and this only appeared because we changed it into a variable. So I'm going to compile my blueprint. I'm going to go to the unclicked event here, and I'm going to press the plus button. This is going to take me into a blueprint graph. So if you take a look at the top right corner here, we have these 2 tabs in the widget blueprint that you're not going to see in regular blueprints. And this allows us to switch between actually building the widget kind of construction area, where you build the widget and add all of these kind of all of the kind of graphics to your widget. And then we have the logic here. And this is where we make sure that if you press a button, it does something in the world. So what we did, we created the unclicked event on a button called button 1 to 9. And I really, really recommend making sure that you keep your names good. So I'm going to say button press me. So by changing this to the name of the variable, it's going to be much easier to understand now that I switched back over to the blueprint graph. And we were going to do something very simple just to make sure that this works. So I'm going to right click here on the blueprint graph, and I'm going to do print string, and I'm going to drag the execution node into the print string node. Print string is going to show text on the screen, and I'm going to change the message into my button was pressed. and I'm going to compile and save, and then I'm going to go and do play. So you can see here at the top left that once I press the button, the event is actually happening, and we're printing this message on the screen. So now we have some logic on the button. So now we're going to make our button do something a little bit interesting. Before we just printed this message on the screen, but what we want to do is we want to go ahead and we want to spawn an actor into the scene. So I'm going to go into the content browser again. I'm going to right click and I'm going to create a new blueprint class. This is going to let me pick a parent class, and we're just going to pick actor. So that's one of the most kind of default things that we can create. So I'm going to call my actor BP_ball. And now I have an actor called Ball that doesn't really do anything. I'm going to go into the blueprint graph here. So you can see that I have a viewport here, and you can see that there's nothing rendering. So very similarly to the UI logic, we have kind of components that we need to add in a hierarchy. So I'm just going to go ahead here and I'm going to add a sphere to it. So now our ball has a visual representation. So our actor now has a sphere that renders. And I'm going to go into the sphere and I'm going to look for the simulate physics flag. And I'm going to turn that on. And then I'm just going to save and close it down. And we're going to go back into the level. So now that I drag my, if I drag my ball here into the scene and I press play, you can see that it basically this is a very simple ball that simulates physics, and what we want to do is we want our button to spawn this ball. So the way that we do that, I'm just going to delete it from the world. I'm going to go back into the widget blueprint here. I'm going to go back into the graph, and here where we had the print string command, I'm going to get rid of that by deleting it. I'm going to right click and I'm going to call spawn actor from class. And this is very similar to what we were doing earlier about when we were spawning an actor from spawning the user widget. We're creating a widget and adding it to the world. So we select the class. And I'm going to select BP ball, which is what I just created. I'm going to drag the execution node or execution line into the spawn actor node here. And if I compile, it's going to complain that it needs a spawn transform. And this means it needs to be spawned into the world with kind of position and rotation and scale coordinates or settings. So what I like to do is, this is the spawn transform. I'm just going to drag out of this and I'm going to call make transform. And I'm just going to give this 0, 0, 0. So it's going to be spawned at 0, 0, 0, which will spawn it at the center of the world. But what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to spawn it at 200 on the z-axis. So if we go into our scene again and I drag the actor here again, you can see here on the right that these are the coordinates. So if I want the ball to spawn here, I need to give it 270 minus 120 and 0. But what I want is we want this to be at 200 because we want it to fall down a little bit. And we want this to be a little bit in front of the camera. So that gives us, let's just say 1,000 on the x-axis. So we want to give 1,000 on the x-axis and 200 on the y-axis. So let's go back into our widget, into our event here, and let's put 1,000. So it's going to be spawned in the exact location as the other one was. So let's get rid of that. And now that we play the game and we press the button, you can see that the ball falls, and the more I spawn them, the more balls get added. And interestingly enough, they are all on top of each other because we're just spawning them at the same location, and we can see them falling here. Now, the last thing we're going to do is we're going to keep count of how many balls we've actually spawned into the world by updating our text whenever we press the button. So let's take a look again at the at our scene here. So what we want to do is we want to modify the text. If you can say here, the text content on this one here when we press the button. So what we need to do is we need to gain access to our text. So I'm going to change that to a variable. And the moment that I press this button is variable, and I go here under the graph, you'll see this text block 68 appear, which means that we can now in the code make changes to the actual component, the text component. But I'm gonna change the name to txt info. Just call it info. And then when we go here, you can see that the text is called info. You don't need to call it like that. It's just good to have a convention for this. I'm going to drag this variable in here and call it get, which is going to give me a reference to the text. I'm going to do set text, and this means that whenever we click the button, we create the ball, and then we can send a message. We can change the message here. So and what we wanted to do, we wanted to check how many balls there were in the world. So we could create some logic to keep track of it here, but it's also just nice to get just ask the world how many balls are in the world. So I'm going to disconnect this for now, or maybe first we just take a look at what happens and make sure this works. So we're going to change this to this is a new value. And when we press the button, this is my widget. When I press it, this changes to this is a new value, and it creates the ball. So the last thing that we need to do is we're going to ask the world how many balls are there in the world, and we can do that by calling get all actors of class. We find the actor type here. We plug this in. So this is going to give us a list of all of the actors. We can get and this, as you can see, this is a little bit of a different icon than this one here. This means that this is an array or a list of things. So this is a list of all of the balls that we've created. And if I drag out of that, it's going to give me all the actions that are available for the array of BP objects. So I'm going to do length. So this is going to tell me how many actors are actually available here. And a little bit of a trick, we could plug this in right here and just get the actual number. But a nice way of doing this is creating a format node. And the format node actually allows us to mix together in a really nice way these kind of different properties. So I can say here the world has, and then I do open and close curly brackets, and I'm just going to call this num, and then I do ball. So you can see that I'm writing the world has, and then I do curly brackets, num, and ball. And when I press enter, it's going to create this variable here for me. I can plug the length into the number, and then I tie this and I connect this in here. So now we should see a message saying when I press, it's gonna tell me the world has 1 ball, the world has 2 balls, the world has 3 balls, and so on and so forth. So this was a little bit of a primer on how to get started with creating user widgets in Unreal Engine. We did dive into a couple of concepts that were a little bit more advanced than for a total beginner, but I think it's good to always know a little bit like where you want to go and take your next steps.